So asylum seekers are often met with corruption at every point of the process. This according to the new corruption report by Lawyers for Human Rights. It says corruption starts at the border, where those seeking asylum are asked for money by officials. The report traced corruption in the asylum system over the past 5 years. We're joined for more on this by Charne Tracey from that organization. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for joining us. Let's start perhaps with how the report was compiled and what you looked at exactly.
Great. So we administered various surveys to about 263 asylum seekers, refugees, and migrants in South Africa. And we were trying to suss out the intersection between the efficiency of service delivery and the effect of corruption, particularly at refugee reception offices in South Africa in relation to the asylum seeker process.
And what is it that they told you? Some people have to make very perilous journeys and sometimes have to cross on over 3 countries just to make it to South Africa. And when they get here, what happens?
So what we found is that, like you said, we found that there are opportunities for corruption arising at many stages of the asylum seeker process, beginning at the border where people are asked for money in exchange for crossing the border by border officials. And this sort of request for bribery continues into the application stage at refugee reception offices, and often migrants can't even enter the offices to make the applications.
There's a myriad of problems that people are faced with when they come to South Africa. I guess corruption is one of them, but also there's quite a few issues in terms of language barriers. Some people come here and they don't even speak the language. Meaning what for these people who come here seeking help?
So this was actually another limitation for our study, language barriers and also difficulty in understanding. At refugee reception offices in particular, a lot of intended asylum seekers are not aware of the fact that interpreters are available at the refugee reception offices and are often requested to make payment for their assistance. So that also poses quite a threat to the well-being of newcomer asylum seekers.
So you have a language barrier. You also coming from a very long way. You don't have money to actually pay these officials. What then is your fate?
So what we've also found is that inevitably when asylum seekers have been barred from entering the asylum seeker processes, they are left undocumented, and this leaves them vulnerable to further exploitation and to arrest and detention and possibly deportation.
On the side of detention, how long then is somebody detained for, and what happens during that time?
So we have encountered lots of problems with arrests and detention as well. In total, and in terms of the Immigration Act, a foreign national can only be detained for a maximum of 120 days. This includes time spent in police custody, although this sort of calculation only starts once they reach Lindela. Home Affairs has been more compliant in recent years in releasing foreign nationals after being detained for 120 days, but with COVID, this has also been problematic.
Detained for some 120 days. Let's go into that issue of what has been happening to people during the coronavirus lockdown. What has this meant for people who have made perilous journeys to get here?
So during the lockdown, migrants were being detained at shelters in Musina and also not being released from Lindela. We had lots of reports and complaints that of intense overcrowding, the inadequate medical access, and people weren't being released and they were being held past their release dates. We also found that unlike South African citizens who were being released on warning, foreign nationals were being remanded to correctional facilities, and we felt that this was just contributing to the already overcrowded conditions in prisons.
What do you put that down to? What you just said, that South Africans would be released, but then people who are not from South Africa would then be remanded in custody. Are you maybe saying that there's definitely a different way in which people who are not from this country are treated deliberately?
Well, definitely. We've noticed an immensely disproportionate impact on foreign nationals, especially during COVID. Migrants who were validly documented were being arrested and then not released. Undocumented non-nationals were also being arrested and remanded. So there is definitely a sort of xenophobic rhetoric in South Africa, and that's definitely been revealed during the lockdown.
We have legal processes, some hail being amongst the best in the world in South Africa, and we do have legal frameworks that look at such things. What does the law say, and are we capacitated enough as a country to deal with this?
We do have a very progressive legal framework in South Africa. And another thing that our corruption report is trying to show is how instances of continued corruption, they threaten South Africa's democratic ideals. Our Refugees Act, for example, is based on international law, and with the constant violations of the Refugees Act, we're also not honoring our international obligations.
What then needs to be done in a situation like this? Have you engaged with the relevant authorities, and what has been the level of engagement? Unfortunately, we've lost connection there to Charne, but thank you very much. I think we got the gist of what it is that we wanted to hear. Lawyers for Human Rights, Charne Tracey. Thank you.